It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Hey, you can see on my Clear Touch Interactive board, I have a new guest. My guest is Andy Braithwaite, and Andy Braithwaite is with OPI International. Folks, OPI International is the largest publication for the office products reseller space globally. I had the great pleasure to meet Andy and the CEO of OPI, Steve Hillard, in Chicago in 2019 at their forum, and we'll talk a little bit about the next forum coming up. But folks, this organization is a phenomenal organization bringing extremely relevant content to an ever-changing industry, and the office products resellers, just like my friends at the Document Imaging channel, definitely got a little bit of slap in the face from this global pandemic. Andy, how are you doing? It's great to have you on the end of the day with Ray.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Ray. Good to be on your show at long last.
Well, you know, Andy, the last time we talked, I was on your podcast, and by the way, congratulations. You know, talk about pivoting and adjusting to market realities. OPI started a podcast. It's called OPI Talk, and I believe it's like rated in the top 5 podcasts or something.
And we were strangely, I don't know how this happened. We were number 1 in Ireland in the business news section very recently, and we're in the top 10 in quite a number of countries in that section. So that's a good start for us, and we're encouraged by that for sure.
Well, fantastic. I know you had some great guests. You had my good friend Ron Books, the CEO. Of course, now he's the chairman of ECI on there. I had the pleasure to be on there. So, you know, Andy, office products reseller space. My friends at the Document Imaging channel always looked at the space as, I think they treated them sometimes like the stepchilds in the community. They're just selling office products. You know, we're the equipment people. We understand financing and they don't. And ironically, as I talk to these folks around the world, around the country, a lot of them have actually pivoted quite well and have done remarkable by offering janitorial supplies and, you know, PPE gear, and they were positioned to do that in a much better way than our friends in the Document Imaging channel. So, you know, what's it, when you look at the office products reseller space today, you know, what is their number one threat, and has that threat changed since the pandemic?
Yeah, I think if you speak to a lot of the more successful dealers, their number one concern is Amazon and the online space right now, for sure.
And that was probably the same before the pandemic.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say the pandemic has perhaps accelerated some of the trends we saw beforehand, and obviously the move to online in the past few months has been quite dramatic, and you know, Amazon has been a beneficiary of that for sure.
How many of the office products resellers would you think are really fluent in online? You know, I know a lot of them have contracts that they're doing through online presence, but it's not really a robust kind of Amazon platform. But are we seeing more and more of the folks go into that type of a platform? Yeah,
they're looking at it for sure. I mean, I don't think I can quantify it for you as in a number of dealers, but that's certainly one area that they're looking at. And you know, don't forget, Amazon is trying to muscle in on some of that that contract business as well, not necessarily through contracts, but trying to kind of eke out some of that off-contract business that you know, dealers and you know, Staples and Depot on their contract side, they sell off-contract as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I noticed, you know, when I was in that business, we did sell office products as part of our copier business, and we, you know, the customers were so used to going to the website to fill out their orders and things, and those were all pre-described orders, or they had their shopping cart that we kind of preloaded for them, and they could just go in there and renew orders. So I you know, they were just in a much better place in my mind than the folks that were selling hardware, and they were product-centric focused, you know, going in and trying to sign leases inside the business. So I think the office product space did much better with that. But you know, we heard some great news. I guess it's good news depending on what side of the fence you're on. But we heard the Office Depot Staples thing, so I want to touch base on that a little bit. You know, back in 2015, they tried to do this. They tried to do it in the 90s. You know, it's just been a struggle. The FTC said no. I think it's going to be different this time, and you know, they're back in there negotiating. But you know, where are you at in your mind between Office Depot and Staples? Give us some thoughts on that.
Okay, you referred to the 2016, that's 2015, 2016 attempt. I've just got the words of the judge to block the deal back in May of 2016, and you know, his words, and I'm quoting, was that there is a reasonable probability that the proposed merger will substantially impair competition in the sale and distribution of consumable office supplies to large business-to-business customers. So really what he was saying is, you know, I'm blocking this whole deal because of the sale of a very small number of kind of traditional office products to a very specific set of customers which are served on a contractual basis, if you like. So if you fast forward today, that probably isn't going to change in the view of the FTC, despite what people are saying about Amazon coming in and all those changes. The people I've spoken to have said that the FTC, and kind of a bit of a slow moving ship, they're probably not going to change their view on that as of today. So having said that, I think that's a bit of a moot point, because I don't think that was ever the intention of Staples, was to combine the business to businesses of Staples and Depot. And for me, it's a purely retail move by the Sycamore Partners, which is the owner of Staples, to try and bring together the store network of Staples and Office Depot. And as far as I can see, the two business to business sides of the business, or of each business, are going to carry on independently of the retail side.
It'll be interesting. It's funny because Office Depot wants to really focus on that B2B, and they have CompuCon, that big IT services business they own too. Yeah,
well, you say that they have CompuCon, but they're looking to offload it, and I don't think that's going to be part of Office Depot for much longer. And you can kind of make of that what you will. But I think when it acquired CompuCon like three years ago or something like that, it on the face of it looked a good move. Move into the services, stickier customers, combining the products and the services. Maybe in a way that Staples did with Dex on the print side. But for whatever reason, CompuCom hasn't been a good investment for them, and I think it's going to be out of Office Depot's ownership in a fairly short space of time, I would think.
It's kind of amazing when you think about it, because everybody needs to pivot. Obviously, Office Depot's looking at their business, Staples looking at their business. Amazon is the huge threat to both of them, and that's why I kind of believe the FTC might look at this a little bit different. If they both go away, they didn't solve the problem the FTC was trying to solve. So there should be some credit going to that. But we know Office Depot in France, they just filed for credit protection. I know it's a different entity, but it's just telling you the model. When you look at that model, that retail model, it's struggling. And, when you look at the B2B model, where you have the resellers that you all, part of your peer groups there, they're going into these businesses being, basically losing the business to these big online giants. There has to be a given in the business sector where offering those other services just seems to me makes sense. And they struggle doing it because they're coming at it from a retail or a supply business, trying to run an IT business. Just like our friends in the imaging channel that are sell print, and they try to get into IT, and they come in with the processes for print to try to do it. It's a miserable failure. But you would think now would be the time they try to figure this out. It doesn't seem like they are.
Yeah, well, I think if we go back to when Sycamore bought Staples in 2017, I think that closed. The first thing they did was split Staples into three businesses: the US retail, the US North America delivery business, and then Canada. And I think that was because that was their out in a way. It was we are going to at some stage sell off or do an IPO on one or more of these businesses. I think that's what's playing out now with the combination of the retail business. Now, whether that's a joint venture between Depot and Staples, or whether Staples buys Office Depot retail, we shall see. But I think that's just it's a financial play by Sycamore. They've obviously identified the synergies they could make between combining those retail, I think 2,200 stores, something like that altogether. You could see that coming down to 15, 16, 1,700. It's a financial play for me for that retail side. It's not kind of moving the needle in terms of innovation and those kind of things.
Well, I agree with you, because I think if they were going to be innovative, they would come together. They would keep CompuCon. They would allow State or Dex Imaging, which is a B2B business model that understands how to deliver with contracts and leasing, and put the CompuCon deliverable through that ecosystem, and maybe add more print dealers. But they're not going that way.
I just say it's kind of, as I alluded to before, Ray, I don't think trying to put the two entities, all of the businesses together, that's going to get past the FTC. So that's why they've got this angle of let's merge the retail, There's probably not going to be any antitrust issues on that. And then the B2B sides will do their own thing. I think it's going to be interesting to see how those B2B sides evolve post whatever transaction happens on the retail side. We can imagine that Depot might have a 2 billion or even more war chest from selling the stores. What will it do with that? And there was an SEC filing last week that said they'd issued $26 million worth of shares for the acquisition of a software company, which they haven't specified. They haven't got back to me when I asked them who it was. So there's something afoot there. They're about to announce their Q4 and full year 2020 results, before the end of this month, probably. They were promising an investor day with some, big news about how their B2B platform was going to evolve. So I think something could happen there. People are talking about whether they will either invest in or create their own B2B marketplace kind of platform, kind of an Alibaba type model for the US. So we'll see.
It'll be interesting, but I don't understand their lack of passion to try to figure out how to penetrate this B2B and this business services business model. I just think it's kind of the future. It seems like they're trying to save a retail model, or they're trying to create a retail model to compete with Amazon, and Amazon's so far past that. Amazon's already delivered IT services in their own way. And look at Salesforce, a software company. They bought an RMM company. They just bought Slack. They're trying to get into that space as well. And the threats to those independent businesses, going into the business, belly to belly, if you will, and providing services, it's the same thing. They really have to figure out how to broaden those deliverables.
It's an interesting point because we've been talking for years about the move to services and solutions and those kind of things, and no one it's a nut that no one really. So if I go back to the kind of the traditional OP space, the Staples and the Depots and those kind of companies, they never really kind of cracked that nut, to be honest, of having that that nice business where the supplies delivery and the solutions deliverable work hand in hand, if you like. It's been a difficult challenge for everybody.
Well, I think it's a discipline thing, and it's I had Milton Barley, who's a very successful MSP out of Nashville, and he was on my first Race Cafe. We talked a little bit about that, but anytime these big behemoths, I call them, try to do something different, as soon as they run into a little bit of objection or a little bit of problem in the deliverable, the old way just takes over and they run back to what they know. And you would think with 2021, just like OPI, hey, we got to do something different. Let's set up a podcast. We got to do something different. Your May meeting that's supposed to be in Chicago this year is going to be a virtual event. And, those sound a little compared to Office Depot and Staples coming together. But at the same time, what are we doing? I mean, like you said, Staples bought Dex Imaging 2 years ago, February this month, and they've done really nothing with it. I mean, they're still kind of running their own thing. They're not really integrated at all. They missed the boat on delivering e-commerce through that Staples platform to all of those Dex customers through a global pandemic. Just mind boggles me. And so, what do you think it takes? Just a whole new leadership? Do we need to change these boards, maybe? I mean, what do you think it's going to take to get the industry to wake up to the reality of services?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think you look at some of the dealers in the traditional, to call it traditional, we don't really like to call it that anymore, but just to clarify, we're talking about the kind of the core OP dealers, the ones, some have successfully gone into those services, but they've focused on a particular service, haven't been tried to be all things to everybody. Some of them are focused on print, some of them are focused on, break room was a big thing. Obviously now with the pandemic and offices not being open, that's a difficult market to be in. But these businesses, if you compare them to kind of the big boxes, as we still call them, some of these dealers are much more agile. They're able to kind of turn on a dime, and that's the reason for their longevity over the years. Even it's been said many times, the end of the independent dealer, but that's never happened.
No, and thankfully it hasn't for a lot of independent businesses. You got some folks trying to cause that to happen, but I think there's a lot of the entrepreneur, those local businesses, they're obviously more agile. They can react a lot quicker than some of these bigger organizations. But here's a question for you, Andy. We just haven't seen this over the years, but do you think it's time that these office products resellers get together with the document imaging channel folks, these copier companies. Why don't we see them merging? We just don't see that as a. And I've talked about this on the end of the day with Ray on my own videos and said, why aren't you guys why are we buying more copier companies? Or why are office products resellers going out and buying more office products resellers? Why don't we see more of a convergence in that space? I mean, what do the folks tell you?
Yeah, I think that's a little bit maybe out of their comfort zone. I think the more natural move for an OP dealer is to look on that Jansan side. It's more about the product, more about shifting boxes. So I think they're more comfortable going into that side of things. Having said that, I know some dealers who are very good at managed print, for example. But I think a more natural, when you talk about blurring of channels, a more natural blurring between the OP and the Jansan side, and some of the other product areas as well.
Well, I would hope that these guys and gals can kind of think a little bit different. I think some of those coming together could be awesome organizations. I mean, I was talking to my friend Robbie down there in Nashville. I mean, he's $40 million office products reseller space, selling $6-7 million worth of toner and printers, all off contract for the most part. And you mix that up with a huge copier company, that would be a powerful entity that could fight the Staples and the Office Depots and the Amazons.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point about that transactional side, because I think a lot of OP dealers are doing good business on that transactional side. And whether we look at trends like work from home, etc., that's only going to amplify that transactional side as perhaps, and more about this than I do, as opposed to NPS for their core customers. So,
well, I've been beating our channel up for a long time, Andy. They focus so much on getting everybody on a contract. The good news for the office products resellers, they've left them thousands and thousands of customers to sell to the way the customer wanted to buy. Otherwise, Robbie down in Nashville wouldn't be selling $7 million worth of toner and printers to an area where there's 3 huge copier dealers. So interesting stuff. Well, Andy, tell us a little bit about this global forum, and we'll kind of wrap it up there. So it's coming in May 5th and 6th.
Okay, yeah, thanks for the plug. Yeah, so instead of doing a physical event in Chicago, which we were planning on doing, we're running a virtual conference on the 5th and 6th of May, and more details forthcoming on the OPI.net web channel.
Okay, and I'll put a link to that on this video.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah.
Andy, there has to be a convergence. I'm trying to drive as much of that thought process as I can. I was very intrigued when I met with some of these office products companies in Chicago in 2019. I can't wait till y'all come back to Chicago. And I just think we're missing the boat if we don't start having those conversations between those two channels. And if you're in the document imaging channel, please look at OPI. Like I said, awesome content, relevant content. Give you a change of venue. Sometimes we just need a change of venue to shake up our imagination. Andy, I appreciate your time. Is there anything you want to say as we wrap this up?
No, just enjoy your channel. It's controversial sometimes, but always very informative, and I enjoy tuning in.
Well, I love doing what I do. I guess that helps, because we all know this, Andy. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo. We'll see y'all tomorrow.